Hello everyone, this is Christopher Brown and this is my instructional design project on causes of the American Revolution for ETD 543. This for my project because there's been a district technology increase which has allowed us to do more technology related things in my classroom, such as the Inspiration or Kidspiration project you'll see a little bit later. This is going to allow students to gain a deeper understanding of the causes of the revolution, create opportunities to create visual representations of the cause and effect relationships that occur, again using the software Inspiration or Kidspiration, whichever one you have available. And it's also going to hopefully help to improve our social studies scores. When looking at school-wide, social studies is one of our lowest subjects, so hopefully that will improve that a little bit. The problem that I was seeing with my students is they had no difficulty understanding the individual historical events. I could teach them about an event, they could read about it, they could watch something about it, and they'd have no problems summarizing it, answering questions, understanding the event as an individual occurrence. However, understanding the relationships between them, that event A caused event B and together caused event C, those cause and effect relationships were a struggle. So that's where the focus of this instructional design unit are going to be. Looking at the problem, the need for them to understand the cause and effect relationships between events and see the long-term results is really my primary focus or my primary need for my students. When looking at the root cause, I noticed or come to the realization that because my students come from very transient homes, they might live in one apartment for 2 months and then move on to the next and then move on to the next, and constantly moving and changing and have very little in their life that's long-term and consistent. So because of that, I've come to a realization that they have difficulty seeing long-term effects and long-term consequences because they have very little exposure to it in their personal lives. So when it comes to understanding long-term cause and effect relationships, they don't see long-term cause and effect relationships on a daily basis. So it really needs to be explicitly taught to them for them to have a better understanding of it. Objectives for my instructional design unit, obviously, if I'm teaching about the causes of the revolution, they have to understand those individual causes. These are the 5 that I'm going to be focusing on: the French and Indian War, the Stamp Act, the Boston Massacre, the Boston Tea Party, and the Intolerable Acts. Now within each of these events, one of the objectives is to understand the causes and effects of each event. So later on you'll see it, the cause and effect map, or what some might call a MultiFlow Map, for each one of the events. What things caused the French and Indian War to happen? And then what were some of the after effects of the French and Indian War? Students will be doing this for all 5 of the causes. So they're going to understand the causes and effects of each event. After every event, we're going to look at how 2 events are interconnected, where that domino effect comes into play. So they'll study the French and Indian War, do the causes and effects for that. They'll study the Stamp Act, do the causes and effects for that. Then they'll look at both events together and see how those events are created. And that's going to go into my 5th objective, which is the creation of a mind map or a graphic organizer. And I'll show you a sample of that a little bit later. Another thing, I was speaking with my technology teacher, our media center teacher, for implementing this project next year, and we talked about them creating a garage band or a song about the causes, but focusing on not just the information for the causes, but the events that show the connection in between the 2. The students have a very high interest in music, so anything we can do to incorporate that will hopefully get them a little bit more motivated, and GarageBand is something the technology teacher teaches the 5th grade students anyway, so it fit perfectly. Or will fit perfectly, I should say, with my next year's 5th graders. My instructional design unit will last about 10 days, 1 day for each of the 5 main causes, and then there's a connection lesson. So once the first 2 events are completed, we'll spend a day focusing on one skill using Inspiration or Kidspiration, but focusing on using that skill, making a connection between those 2 events. Then I'll teach the 3rd event and then connect event 2 to event 3 and so on. They're going to be using their technology classes for the 2 weeks of instruction to create their GarageBand song about the causes, and at the end they'll take an online post-test using the website Socrative. When implementing my lessons in terms of the events themselves, it's going to be very consistent. They'll be presented with the information, they'll be given the cause and effect map or MultiFlow map, and given time to complete it. Now the big transition is going to be from starting off with teacher-led whole group instruction and slowly releasing that responsibility to the students. So the first day, French and Indian War, that's going to be entire whole group. We go through the textbook together, we do the map together, we discuss it together. But once they get to the later events, the Boston Tea Party and the Intolerable Acts, the students will be focused on me presenting them, here's the information, here's the map, here's a partner, you've got 20 minutes, go. So slowly releasing that responsibility so they can build up their independence, not only being able to do it with me, but then with a small group, then with a partner, then hopefully individual. The desks in my classroom are set up to facilitate that. They're in horizontal rows, which allows them to have at the very least one partner, if not 2 or 3 around them that they can speak with and discuss and very quickly make a small group. But they're all still facing forward, which will allow them to see the PowerPoints if there is one. I have some images that I'll show them. One of the events is no text at all. It's strictly being able to identify the causes and effects through a video and etc. So they can work with partners, they can work with small groups, but when information is being presented them in a whole group setting on the projector or on the board using the document camera, they're able to do that as well relatively easily. For my evaluation, the pre-evaluation is simply just a questionnaire. Do you know about this event? Yes or no? And if you do, what do you know about it? My post-evaluation, my summative assessment, is what you see a screenshot of here on the screen. This is the website Socrative, and what Socrative allows you to do is make online, interactive, multiple choice, true and false, or short answer questions. So the students will be presented with these 10 questions. As you can see, you have 10 that are in yellow, and there are 3 or 4 down here in red. The orange-red are the short answers, which is the student evaluation of the unit. What did they like about it? What did they not? What did they feel was helpful? What did they feel was not helpful? At the end of it, Socrative will allow me to print out a report that will give me the student's name, their score for each question, their overall score for the test, but it'll also give me a breakdown of the percentage of students that got question 1 correctly or question 2 correctly. So when I look at my results, it gives me a very quick and easy to read report that will show me or give me an idea rather of what events did they really understand, which events do I need to think about doing things differently for the following year. Here's a sample of what the Socrative report might look like. This is not for my specific evaluation tool that I created. This is a sample that I found on the website itself. So you have your student names. You can watch the results live, so this just shows they have 100%. They've completed the test. And then for every question, what each student answered and what percentage of those students got the answer correctly. So question 1, other than Peyton Manning here, they did fairly well. Sorry about that. Question 2, about a third of them got the question incorrectly. So question 2 is something we'll have to look at and adjust. So it allows very easily with these reports to guide your changes for following years. Where do you want to make adjustments? Where can you make improvements in your overall unit based on the questions? The last question, this is a short answer where the students had to type something in, so there is no right or wrong. The teacher has to go in and check that, and that's actually how I will get my students' attitudes and feelings towards the instructional unit using the short answer function on Socrative. So I'm going to go through a sample of the materials and the progression of my individual event lessons. First off, I'll always start out with the presentation of the information, whether it's through text, through video, images, or sometimes a combination of them. Then they're going to go through a MultiFlow Map, which I will show you. And then the Inspiration or Kidspiration is the technology-based project they'll use to create a graphic organizer or a mind map for the whole unit to really show visually the interconnections between the different events that we will study. So here's a sample text that the students would read. This is for the Boston Massacre, so this is a little bit later in the unit. So the student will go through this with the partner. The image on the right, Paul Revere's famous engraving, or propaganda engraving, I should say, of the Boston Massacre will be on the board for them to see and look at, as obviously the carving, the propaganda, was one of the effects of the event itself. So they'll read the text with a partner, they'll see images or video, whatever happens to be on the board, then they'll go to the MultiFlow Map. So on the MultiFlow Map, if your schools have purchased the Thinking Map series, this is something that they focus on. So every event that they have, they fill out one of these graphic organizers. They describe the event goes down here in the center, they identify and organize the causes of that event, as well as the effects of the event. So if we were looking at the Boston Massacre, one of the causes would be protests due to the Stamp Act, or taunting and throwing rocks and snowballs at the British soldiers, which eventually led to one of the British soldiers or someone firing into the crowd, which left a number of colonists dead. So after the Boston Massacre, number of colonists dead or injured would be in effect. Paul Revere's famous engraving would be in effect, and more people joining the rebels in fighting for their freedoms would also be in effect. So students would fill out a MultiFlow Map like this for every event that we do. So French and Indian War all the way through the Intolerable Acts. Once that's completed, once we've done 2 events or more, we're going to go to the Inspiration, Kidspiration to visually show the connections between those events. So the French and Indian War left Great Britain in debt, which led to many new taxes like the Stamp Act. Stamp Act, many protested it, some became violent, which caused the Boston Massacre. So this will visually help them to see that these aren't individual occurrences. These are long-term effects that together in a almost chain reaction, domino-like function caused a nation to rebel against its own government. And to wrap up, some of the challenges and draft changes that I made. One of the challenges that I had at first was coming up with the root cause of the problem. Originally, when I would look at problems, it would be very simple. Okay, my students don't understand this. I didn't really focus on the why. I immediately went into what things can I do to help them better understand it. This project kind of forced me to look at the root cause a little bit, which really, really helped me. Realizing that they don't understand long-term cause and effect relationships because a lot of my students don't have long-term consistent things within their lives. Another thing that this project really, for lack of a better term, forced me to do was look at the transition timeline. How much of my lessons are going to be teacher-led? How long before I transition into student-led or full student independence on the project? So looking at those 5 events, writing out my lesson plans rather, really helped me to do that. And the last challenge, and ended up being one of my biggest draft changes, was my final assessment. Originally, my final assessment was just going to be the GarageBand project. But I realized for 2 weeks of instruction, to really do that GarageBand project well and use as a final assessment, it would have to take a lot longer than I was really willing to spend on it. So shifting the GarageBand project not to the assessment, but just as something fun they can do in their technology class, and using the Socratic quiz really seemed to fit a lot better with what I was trying to do and the amount of time I wanted to allot for those standards that I'm teaching. Thank you for viewing my presentation, and have a great day.